I never thought I'd find myself in this position, sitting alone with a glass of wine at my family's Christmas dinner, watching my wife act like it was just another Tuesday night. Her name is Rachel, and she always had a way of lighting up a room, but this year, something felt off. The way she laughed a little too loud at my cousin Mark's jokes and how she kept checking her phone during dinner. It was all too obvious. I was supposed to feel joy and warmth, surrounded by family, but instead I felt a growing pit of unease in my stomach. We'd been married for 5 years, and like any couple, we had our ups and downs. The first few years were filled with love and adventure. We traveled together, hiked through national parks, and spent late nights sharing dreams over cheap wine. But over time, the excitement faded. We got caught up in our routines, work, chores, and the occasional argument about whose turn it was to take out the trash. I thought we were fine, maybe not perfect, but what marriage is. Then came the signs. Little things I brushed off at first, late nights at work, sudden interest in girls' nights, and that distant look in her eyes when we'd watch TV together. It all came to a head that Christmas. Rachel excused herself from the table, saying she had to take a call. I watched her walk away and my heart sank. She was always on her phone these days, and it felt more like a lifeline than a means of communication. I glanced at the clock. It was already 9 p.m. The kids were excitedly playing in the living room, screaming and laughing, but my mind was elsewhere. I didn't want to ruin the festive spirit, so I forced a smile and tried to engage with my family. When she finally returned, she seemed flustered. "Sorry, it was a work emergency," she said, waving her hand dismissively. I wanted to believe her, but the truth was, I felt a growing suspicion. I had no solid proof, just a gut feeling that something wasn't right. It was as if an invisible wall had been erected between us, and I was the only one trying to break it down. Later that night, when the kids were asleep, I found myself scrolling through our shared Google account. I stumbled upon an email thread that made my heart race. It was between Rachel and someone named Mark, not my cousin Mark, but a different one. The emails were flirty and intimate, filled with inside jokes and references to late-night meetups. My hands shook as I read each line, the reality of what I was uncovering sinking in. I confronted her about it the next day, after everyone had left and the house felt eerily quiet. "Rachel, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. When I confronted her, I watched the color drain from her face. For a moment, she looked genuinely scared. "What are you talking about?" She replied, but her eyes darted away from mine. It was her tell, the way she always avoided direct eye contact when she was lying. I laid it all out, every detail from the emails to the late-night absences. Her excuses were pathetic. She claimed it was just a joke, a harmless flirtation that meant nothing. But the way she stumbled over her words told me everything I needed to know. I felt a rage building inside me. "So, what? You think this is funny? You think I'm going to sit here and let you lie to my face?" I shouted, the anger spilling over. But the truth was, even as I yelled, I was also crumbling inside. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. The confrontation ended with her storming off, declaring I was overreacting. Her dismissiveness only added fuel to the fire of my anger. I felt lost, betrayed, and utterly alone. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. This was a turning point in my life. I couldn't just brush it under the rug. I had to decide how to move forward. As I sat there, processing the whirlwind of emotions, a clarity began to emerge. I realized that I deserved better than this. But how to enact that change? That was the question that loomed over me as I prepared to take the next steps in my life. I had to think carefully about my future and what I wanted it to look like without her in it. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a fog, heavy and suffocating. Rachel and I were like two strangers living under the same roof. Any semblance of normalcy between us vanished. She avoided me, acting as if nothing had happened, while I was left reeling from the betrayal and trying to pick up the pieces of my shattered trust. The kids noticed the tension. They would look between us with confused eyes, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, and it broke my heart. They deserved better than this. I spent hours in my home office, staring blankly at the wall, thoughts spiraling through my mind. I went through the emails again, dissecting every line, trying to find some hint of denial that I could cling to. I wanted to believe Rachel's excuses, that it was just a flirtation, that she didn't mean anything by it. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was more than just jokes and banter. There was a connection there, one that she had forged outside our marriage, which was now hanging by a thread. I decided to reach out to a few close friends for support. I needed to talk to someone about what I was going through, but I was also terrified of judgment. What would they think of me for not recognizing the signs sooner? Would they say I was weak for not fighting harder for my marriage? My best friend Tom was the first I called. When I finally told him what had happened, he was furious. "Dude, you deserve better than this. You can't just let her walk all over you," he said. His words were a lifeline, pulling me out of the depths of self-doubt. I started to formulate a plan. I wouldn't confront Rachel again just yet. Instead, I wanted to gather evidence, things that would make it impossible for her to deny the truth. I began to snoop a little, something I never thought I'd do but felt was necessary given the circumstances. I checked her phone when she left it unattended. I went through her social media accounts and scrutinized messages. I discovered photos of her and Mark together, their faces close, her laughter captured in a moment where she looked genuinely happy. That image was like a punch in the gut. I knew I had to act without giving her a hint of what I was doing. The more I uncovered, the more my resolve strengthened. I needed clarity on how deep this affair went. Was it merely emotional, or had they taken it to the next level? Part of me feared what I might find, but I couldn't stop myself. I felt driven by a mix of anger and heartbreak, furious at her for doing this to us, and heartbroken that the woman I loved could betray me so easily. Finally, after a week of digging, I had enough evidence to confront her again. I collected screenshots of messages, pictures, and even a few incriminating emails. I was ready to lay it all out, armed with the truth, but I also wanted to show her that I wasn't just a victim in this situation. I had power, and I was going to take back control of my life. The day of the confrontation was tense. I waited until the kids were asleep and the house fell silent. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I approached Rachel, who was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked up, annoyance flickering across her face. "What now?" she huffed, the annoyance quickly turning into a hint of apprehension as she sensed the seriousness in my tone. I sat down and placed my phone on the coffee table, sliding it toward her. "I have something for you to see." The look on her face shifted from irritation to confusion as she glanced at the screen. I watched her face drain of color as she began to read, her eyes widening as she processed what was in front of her. The silence was deafening. "What is this?" she stammered, attempting to regain her composure. "Proof, Rachel. Proof that you've betrayed everything we built together," I replied, feeling a mix of anger and sadness wash over me. "You can't deny this anymore." Her eyes darted back and forth between the phone and my face. "I can explain," she said, her voice trembling. "You've had plenty of time to explain," I shot back. "You think I'm just going to let you brush this off as a mistake? You think I'm going to forgive and forget just because you beg me to?" Her defenses crumbled as she started to cry. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I just got caught up in the moment. I thought it was just harmless fun." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "Harmless fun?" I echoed, anger bubbling inside me. "This is not fun, Rachel. This is a betrayal of everything we promised each other. You've shattered my trust, and you expect me to just forget about it." The confrontation spiraled into a heated discussion filled with accusations and denials. Rachel claimed it was just a phase, a moment of weakness. She promised it wouldn't happen again, that she loved me, and that she was sorry. But I felt the weight of her words, empty promises that could never undo the damage she had caused. As the night wore on, I realized something profound. This was not just about the affair, it was about my own worth. I had to consider my next steps carefully. Would I fight for this marriage? Or was it time to walk away from someone who had shown me so little respect? The emotional turmoil was a walking contradiction. Anger collided with the remnants of love, and I felt lost in the chaos. What was the right choice? After that night, the air in our house crackled with tension. I was stuck in a limbo, oscillating. Between anger and the faint remnants of love I still felt for Rachel. I spent the days in a haze, going through the motions of work and family life while my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and mistrust. Each time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the image of the woman who had laughed and shared intimate moments with another man while I was left in the dark. Rachel seemed to be in damage control mode. She would try to engage with me, but her efforts felt forced and insincere. "Can we talk?" she would ask, her tone a combination of hope and anxiety. I would nod, but I found it increasingly difficult to have a genuine conversation. Each interaction felt like stepping on a minefield. I was still processing the chaos within me, and we both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I confided in Tom more often, using him as a sounding board for my emotional turmoil. He was a great listener, but even he couldn't shake the anger I felt toward Rachel. "You deserve better, man. You really do," he would say, and those words stung. I knew they were true, but the thought of leaving felt both liberating and terrifying. As the days turned into weeks, I began to think practically. I didn't want to stay in a relationship built on lies, but the idea of divorce sent me spiraling. What would it mean for our kids? How would they handle the fallout? I knew I had to make a decision soon, but I couldn't bring myself to take that leap. Then one night, after the kids were asleep, I found myself sitting on the couch, scrolling through old photos of us. I came across a picture from a vacation we had taken a few years back. Rachel and I were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, looking blissfully happy. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, and for a brief moment I wanted to go back to that time, to the innocence of our love before everything got complicated. But then reality crashed back in, and I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. Rachel wandered into the room, her eyes red from crying. "Can we just talk, please?" she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, the woman I used to love, the mother of my children and the person who had hurt me deeply. "Talk about what, Rachel? Talk about how you betrayed me, how you thought it was okay to have an emotional affair with someone else. What can you possibly say that would make me feel better?" My voice was cold, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. She sat down, wiping her tears. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want to explain what happened." I crossed my arms, feeling the anger simmering just below the surface. "I don't need your explanation. I need honesty and accountability. You made a choice, one that hurt me and our family." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "It was a moment of weakness. I was feeling lonely and I didn't reach out to you the way I should have. It wasn't about you, it was about me trying to escape my own problems." "Escape?" I scoffed. "You chose to escape into someone else's arms instead of working through it with me. That's not just a moment of weakness. That's a choice you made repeatedly." She looked down, her shoulders slumping. "I'm so sorry. I should have communicated better. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear." Her words felt hollow, echoing in the silence of the room. I wanted to believe her, to see a flicker of genuine remorse, but every time I tried to focus on the positives, images of her betrayal flooded my mind. "Rachel, I can't be the only one trying to hold this marriage together," I said, my voice steady. "I need to know if you're willing to fight for this, to prove to me that you want to make it work, because right now I don't see that happening." "I will," she said earnestly. "I'll do whatever it takes. I promise to go to counseling to communicate better. Just please don't give up on us." That was the first time in weeks that I saw a flicker of hope. I wanted to believe her, but I also knew that trust was built over time, not just words. I had to think about what I truly wanted. Did I want to salvage our marriage, or was I just clinging to the remnants of what once was? The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Rachel kept her promise, reaching out to therapists and trying to engage more with the kids and me. I could see her genuine effort, but each time she smiled or laughed, I couldn't shake the memory of her infidelity from my mind. I kept replaying our conversations and arguments, dissecting every word. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance between hope and anger. It wasn't until I attended a session with her that I realized the depth of my confusion. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Miller, was calm and compassionate, gently guiding us through our emotions. Rachel opened up about her feelings of loneliness and inadequacy, and while I wanted to empathize, My resentment bubbled to the surface each time she spoke about her affair, as if it were an unfortunate mistake rather than a betrayal of our love. After the session, I felt exhausted. I wanted to believe that we could work through this, but I also felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. I was torn between wanting to support her through her struggles and the anger that she had chosen to confide in another man instead of me. The emotional weight was becoming too much to bear. As I drove home that day, the weight of the world felt heavy on my shoulders. I realized that I needed to focus on myself, to figure out what I truly wanted moving forward. I couldn't keep playing the role of the victim while she tried to piece our marriage back together. The thought of whether I could ever truly forgive her haunted me. I knew I had to confront Rachel again, to lay it all on the table one last time. Would I choose to fight for our relationship, or was it time to consider moving on? The decision weighed heavily on my mind, and I knew I had to come to a resolution soon. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, contemplating how to approach the conversation with Rachel. The house was filled with silence, the kids tucked away in their rooms, blissfully unaware of the upheaval in our lives. I needed to find clarity in my thoughts before I spoke to her. I needed to understand what I wanted. Rachel walked in, her hair slightly messy from the day, and I could see the remnants of her earlier attempts to connect with me in the way she wore a soft expression, her eyes searching mine for a sign of hope. "Can we talk?" she asked hesitantly, her voice breaking the stillness. "Yeah, we need to," I replied, steeling myself for what I had to say. I motioned for her to sit down, and as she did, I could feel the tension building between us like a tightly coiled spring. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my voice steady but calm. "About us, our marriage, everything that's happened." Rachel nodded, her expression a mixture of hope and anxiety. "I've been thinking too. I really want to make this work, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said, almost pleading. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "The thing is, Rachel, I don't know if I can just jump back into things like nothing happened. The truth is, I feel betrayed, deeply hurt, and it's hard for me to trust you again. I don't want to hurt you, but I also need to be honest about how I feel." Her expression dropped, and I could see the realization of my words sink in. "I understand," she said softly. "I know I messed up, and I can't expect you to just forgive me right away, but I'm here, willing to work through it together." I appreciated her willingness to engage, but I felt a mixture of anger and sadness swell within me. "Rachel, it's not just about willingness. It's about rebuilding trust. I need to know if you're committed to that process genuinely, not just because it's the easy thing to say right now." "I am committed," she insisted, her voice shaking slightly. "I want to show you that I'm serious. I'll go to therapy, I'll talk about what led me to that point, and I'll do whatever you need me to do to make this right." I could feel myself wavering. There was a part of me that still loved her, that wanted to believe in the person I had married. But the memories of her betrayal lingered, and I couldn't simply ignore them. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "Let be real. How do I know you won't do this again? How do I know I can trust you?" Rachel looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "I know I've given you no reason to trust me, but I want to change. I promise to be transparent. I'll share my phone, my emails, anything you need. Just please don't give up on me." Her words struck a chord within me. I could see she was genuinely remorseful, but the scars of betrayal were still fresh. "I want to believe you, Rachel, but it's going to take time. I need to process all of this, and I need space to figure out what I truly want." "I understand," she replied quietly, looking defeated. "I'll give you space, but I hope you'll still be open to talking about it. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a swell of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her and reassure her that everything would be okay, but another part was still reeling from the pain. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I felt that I needed to stand firm in my resolve. The following days played out in a blur. I kept my distance, focusing on my work and the kids, trying to avoid unnecessary confrontations with Rachel. I could see her making an effort. She cleaned the house, spent time with the kids, and tried to engage with me during dinner. But the truth was, every interaction felt strained. I was constantly on guard, waiting for the other shoe to drop, wondering if I could ever trust her again. I found myself reflecting on the core of our marriage, the foundation it was built on. We had been through so much together, but this betrayal felt like an earthquake, shaking everything I thought I knew to its core. I started to ask myself if it was worth fighting for or if it was time to consider moving on. One night after a particularly long day, I found myself sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey, trying to drown out my thoughts. Rachel joined me, her eyes puffy from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked again, her voice small. I sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "Yeah, let's talk." She sat down beside me, her body tense. "I know things are hard right now, and I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you until it was too late. I just want to make it better." "Rachel," I said, "making it better is not going to happen overnight. Trust takes time, and I'm not there yet. I want to work on this, but I can't promise anything right now." "I understand," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "I just hope you'll give me a chance to prove that I can be better. I promise I won't take you for granted again." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but the fear of being hurt again loomed large in my mind. As the evening wore on, I realized I needed to set some boundaries. "If we're going to move forward, I need to see consistent effort from you," I said firmly. "I need you to be open and transparent at all times, and I need to know that you're genuinely committed to making this work." "Yes, I promise," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me the chance to show you." The conversation left me feeling emotionally drained, but something shifted within me that night. I realized that while I was still hurt and angry, I had to consider whether I wanted to invest in the possibility of healing together or if it was time to let go. I needed to give myself the space to heal and decide what my next steps would be. As I made my way to bed that night, I realized the decision was more complicated than I had thought. The love I had for Rachel was still there, but it was now intertwined with doubt. How could I rebuild trust after everything that had happened? I knew I had to find the answer soon, and I had to be ready to embrace whatever decision I ultimately made. The next few weeks passed in a haze, a blur of fleeting moments interspersed with long conversations that felt more like negotiations than emotional reconnections. Rachel was putting in effort, no doubt about that. But every small gesture of kindness she offered was met with my skepticism. Would I really allow myself to be swept up in the hope of her change, or was this all just a facade? Could I ever genuinely forgive her and move on? One day, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Mark, the guy she had been seeing. He had shared a picture of himself and some friends laughing over drinks, a caption about how life was good. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The realization that Rachel had shared moments like this with him, laughing and enjoying life, while I sat on the sidelines feeling betrayed, made my stomach churn. I felt anger bubbling to the surface again. How could she have let it go this far? How could she have allowed herself to get wrapped up in someone else when we had so much history? The betrayal felt fresh all over again, and the notion of moving forward with her began to feel daunting. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I could sense the tension in the air. Rachel was trying hard to create a sense of normalcy, but it felt forced. I pushed my food around on my plate, lost in my thoughts. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. Concern etched on her face. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I keep wondering if we can really get past this." She looked down, her fingers twisting together anxiously. "I understand that it's hard for you to trust me again, but I need you to believe that I want to make it work. I want to be the partner you deserve." Her words felt sincere, but I couldn't shake the images of her with Mark. "Rachel, it's not just about wanting to make it work. It's about what you've done. Can I trust that you won't repeat the same mistakes?" She paused for a moment, tears filling her eyes. "I would never want to hurt you again. I've realized that I can't ignore my feelings or take our relationship for granted. I want to address the issues that led me to that point in the first place." "I need to see that commitment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to know that you're not just saying what I want to hear." I could see the pain in her expression, but I also sensed a flicker of determination. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice breaking. I'll go to therapy, I'll talk about my feelings, and I'll make sure to communicate better. Just please don't give up on me." Her desperation tugged at something within me, but I felt a wall rising up inside. "Rachel, it's not just about you anymore. We have kids to think about. I can't just pretend everything is fine." "I know," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, "but I want to show you that I can be better. I want our family to heal together." That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. I knew we were at a crossroads and the future of our marriage was hanging in the balance. I felt pulled in two directions, one that led to forgiveness and rebuilding, while the other screamed for me to protect myself and walk away. I decided to take a step back, to give myself time to reflect on the relationship without constant reminders of Rachel's betrayal. The next few days, I focused on the kids, spending quality time with them, engaging in their activities and creating new memories. It felt refreshing and allowed me to breathe without the weight of our marital issues hanging over my head. One Saturday morning, as we sat together in the living room watching cartoons, my son, Jake, turned to me. "Daddy, are you and Mommy okay?" His innocent question struck a chord within me. I wanted to protect him from all of this, but how could I? "Yeah, buddy, we're okay," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just working on some things, that's all." "Like what?" he asked, tilting his head curiously. "Just some grown-up stuff," I said, ruffling his hair. "You don't have to worry about it." He nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. It was a stark reminder that our issues affected the entire family, and it made my heart ache. I wanted to shield them from the pain and confusion, but I also needed to figure out what was best for them and for me. As the days turned into weeks, Rachel continued to make efforts, but I felt myself pulling away. I was tired of the emotional roller coaster. I needed to prioritize my own well-being, and while I still loved her, I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust her again. The breaking point came one night after a particularly emotional conversation in which Rachel poured out her heart about her regrets and how she wanted to make things right. "I just need you to believe that I'm serious about this," she said, desperation lacing her tone. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw the toll this was taking on both of us. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, feeling the weight of my words. "I want to believe you, but the past looms too large." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of sympathy. "What does that mean for us?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It means I need time. I need space to figure out if I can move past this. If I can trust you again," I said, my heart heavy. "I don't want to live in limbo anymore. I need clarity." The reality of my words hung heavily in the air, and I watched as the light in her eyes dimmed. I realized that this was the moment where things could change. For both of us, either for better or for worse. It was time to confront the truth, to face the possibility of separation if that meant protecting my own heart and our family's well-being. As I lay in bed that night, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity wash over me. No matter the outcome, I had to prioritize what was best for me and ultimately for our children. I knew I had to make a decision soon, and while the thought of ending things with Rachel was terrifying, I also understood that I needed to be true to myself. Would it be possible to rebuild, or was it time to let go? I had to decide, and soon. The following days felt like a delicate balancing act. I was navigating the tightrope of emotions, caught between the love I had for Rachel and the betrayal that haunted me. I knew I had to make a definitive choice, one that would ultimately shape the course of our lives. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the back porch, staring into the darkness. The air was crisp, and the stars twinkled above, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside me. Rachel joined me, her presence a familiar comfort. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice a mixture of vulnerability and determination. "Yeah, we need to," I replied, my heart pounding. I sensed that this conversation could be pivotal, either a turning point in our relationship or a decisive moment in which we would part ways. "It's been hard for both of us," she began, taking a deep breath. "I know that I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry for my actions. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on why I made those choices." Her voice trembled slightly, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. "I want to make things right. I want to fight for us, for our family." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions roiling within me. I know you want to make it right, but I need to be honest. I'm struggling to trust you again. It's not just about wanting to fix things, it's about actually doing it. I understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm willing to do anything. I'll go to therapy, I'll be open and honest, and I'll do the hard work, but I need you to meet me halfway. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. Rachel, I want to believe you, I really do, but it's going to take time and I need you to be patient with me. I can't just flip a switch and forget what happened. I need to know that you're genuinely committed to rebuilding our relationship. I will be, she replied earnestly. I'll prove it to you every day if that's what it takes. I love you and I don't want to lose you. Her words struck a chord, and for a fleeting moment I felt the warmth of the love we once shared. But I also knew that love alone wasn't enough. We were standing on shaky ground and the path ahead was uncertain. I think we need to take it slow, I said, choosing my words carefully. Let's start fresh but with clear boundaries. I need to see consistent efforts from you over time. If we're going to make this work, it can't just be about promises, it has to be about actions. Rachel nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and determination. I can do that. I'll show you that I can be the partner you deserve. I'll do the work. As I looked into her eyes, I felt a spark of hope. Perhaps we could find a way to rebuild what was broken, but it would require both of us to commit fully. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I sensed that Rachel was ready to put in the effort. In the following weeks, we embarked on this uncertain journey together. Rachel began therapy, and I watched as she slowly started to peel back the layers of her emotions. She shared her struggles, her fears, and the reasons behind her choices. It was raw and uncomfortable, but I could see her genuine desire to change. I also began to reflect on my own feelings and needs. I sought counseling for myself to help process the anger and sadness that lingered. It was a humbling experience, one that forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities. I learned that healing takes time and that it's not a linear process. There were setbacks, moments when old wounds would reopen. But gradually, we began to communicate better. As the months passed, I noticed subtle changes in Rachel. She was more engaged with the kids, more present in our conversations, and her efforts to rebuild trust became apparent. I found myself opening up slowly, allowing her back into my heart. It was a cautious dance of vulnerability and trust, but I could feel the foundation of our relationship beginning to stabilize. I knew we weren't out of the woods yet, but I also realized that we were both committed to this journey. I had learned that love is not just a feeling. It's a choice that requires action, effort, and a willingness to confront pain together. One evening after dinner with the kids, I found Rachel sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes shimmering with emotion. I just want to thank you for being patient with me, she said, her voice soft. I know I hurt you, but I'm grateful you're willing to work through this together. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I'm grateful too. It's not easy, but I believe we can get through this if we keep communicating and stay committed to each other. As we sat there, I felt a sense of hope rising within me. The road ahead would undoubtedly be bumpy, but maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild a new kind of love, one that was stronger, more resilient, and rooted in honesty. And as I looked into Rachel's eyes, I realized that while the journey of healing was long, it was one I was willing to take if it meant finding our way back to each other. We weren't there yet, but for the first time in a long while, I felt optimistic about the future and the possibility of reclaiming our family and our love.